Hi and welcome to our very first film review for our film club class. This is Elsie, Megan and I and Ben. Over the next 20 minutes or so we're just going to be discussing a few films, reviewing them, having a bit of fun while we do it. The films are ranging from 1965's Alphaville through to 2001 Space Odyssey, filmed in 68, through to Blade Runner, filmed in the 80s, and then of course our vlog, Dr. Horrible Singalong, which was done in 2008. But our very first one for you today, without further ado, is 2001 Space Odyssey. So why don't you check out the trailer? 2001 A Space Odyssey is a sci-fi classic, filmed and produced in 1968 by Stanley Kubrick, based on the novel written by Arthur C. Clarke. 2001 A Space Odyssey is an absolute epic from the content of the film, production of it, and its simple ability to pioneer and reshape filmmaking forever. Starting at the tail of the dawn of man and working right through to the evolution of an emotional talking computer, then Space Babies, its out-of-this-world scenery, technical brilliance, and cinematic musical score are unparalleled. 2001 A Space Odyssey is well worth the watch, even if you're not a sci-fi junkie. So probably first question, girls, would be, did you actually enjoy the film?
I did really like it. I think I would give it about a 4 out of 5 rating. Yeah.
I think I'd have to go the opposite way. I didn't really enjoy it.
2 out of 5. I'd be maybe a 3 out of 5. Now that's because I did appreciate the film for what it was. It was a masterpiece, but I also didn't like it because it lacked a bit of narrative. I'm probably more accustomed to films that have a strong narrative and strong plot drive. But Kubrick's intentions with this film weren't to do that. He decided that he was going to leave lots of space for interpretation and not have such logical sequencing in his narrative. So for instance, you go from a scene with the Dawn of Man right through, which will skip straight to a spaceship scene, which will further along, they'll be on the moon and then they'll be traveling to Jupiter. It's just, there's no real logical sequencing. But his intentions with that is though you can't guess what's happening next, it still engages your interest because it's just random. What did you guys think about it?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I liked the storyline, how it was depicted quite visually rather than verbally. It had really minimal dialogue, and most of those visual long scenes were filled with classical orchestra music, which was visually depicted space is quite beautiful. I think the minimal dialogue allowed time for viewers to sort of self-reflect and come to their own conclusions about what Kubrick was trying to talk about.
Yeah, I guess it was obviously not made for our time. It wasn't made for 2015. I think he obviously was aiming for his audience in 68 because I don't think the moon landing was until 1969, if I was in class right. So space would have still been a whole new thing, so where he has those huge long pauses where he's going the spaceship for like 10 minutes across the screen, I think that would have been such an awesome thing to people in 1968. But here and now we've already had Star Wars, we've had the moon landing, we've had so much that space isn't really a new concept to us. So
the narrative is quite broad. For instance, there's very little dialogue, like you said, Megan. I think less than 50% of the film was actual dialogue, which leaves a lot of space to interpretation and thought. And some of that thought, I think Kubrick intended that would be looked into the themes that he presents in the film. Now he does present many, but one of the key ones is the idea of evolution, which he represents with monkeys at the start, and then also this idea of the evolution of technology, which is represented in the bone at the start, which then correlates to the spaceship in the second sequence, and then eventually that moves on to Hal, who introduces a robot that can think and sort of feel for itself within the third sequence. So what do you think about that, House?
yeah, I found it really interesting, especially in the first sequence, which was the Dawn of Man, and how that kind of really shows the first time where they have really created their own tool of mankind, and how he uses it to create his dominance, to prove it with amongst the other group of apes. And then after he's kind of dominated, when he throws it up into the air, where it then morphs into the spaceship.
Yeah, which is within the second sequence. Turns out to be a Pan Am spaceship that carries the main character for that segment, which is Dr. Hayward Floyd, where he's travelling to a space station orbiting Earth. And in this sequence, we can see the evolution of man as discovering new boundaries of exploration into outer space, which is a very new thing. The spaceship is controlled by the team of Pan Am people, which shows that humans are still in control of their tools at that stage. But also within that, it's quite interesting that as the development or as the exploration continues, man sort of is seen as a child where they have to learn to walk again within new environments, which is zero gravity, and they are reduced to eating liquid food similar to what a children eats, showing that they're very unfamiliar with their new environment.
So you talked about the humans still being in control of the spacecraft, which is interesting because in the third sequence we see this scientifically brilliant creation called HAL, who's a computer that can almost think and feel for itself.
Yeah, so Hal's completely in control of the spacecraft in this segment. He is the only person he's the only one who knows what the mission is about, and he controls the livelihood of all of the spacemen on board. This puts him in the most powerful position and shows the humans as very vulnerable. Hal finds a fault within the spacecraft and sends the spacemen out to fix it, but within that they find out that there wasn't anything wrong with it, and so that reflects that there's something wrong with Hal, to which they discuss, and Hal becomes feeling threatened, which is quite a human emotion to feel for a computer.
Yeah, and that was probably shown on one of the scenes that I actually enjoyed in the movie, because it was a scene where you could always predict what was coming next. How they walk into the pod secretively, and then Hal's watching through with his all-seeing eye and lip reading what's going on. And probably the key thing, tying it back with the evolution of technology, was just the idea that there was the boat at the start which became a weapon, which then they threw up to the air. Then it symbolically became the spaceship, which they were still in control of it, and then they end up in this third sequence creating something that was essentially out of their control. Overall, an absolutely bizarre film, almost impossible to analyse in just a few minutes, but brilliant nonetheless. So we'll move on to our next film though. Megan, what was our next film?
So next we're going to talk about Blade Runner, which was done in 1982 by Ridley Scott. Let's look at the trailer.
Blade Runner is a 1982 cyberpunk sci-fi film directed by Ridley Scott. Set in a dystopian future, in 2019 Los Angeles, genetically manufactured beings called replicants were made to serve as slaves in colonies off Earth. Superior in strength and intelligence, but with a limited lifespan, replicants performed mutiny on an off-world colony and became a threat to humans. Now illegal on Earth, it is up to Blade Runners, a special task police force, to set out and terminate replicants. The film follows Deckard, played by Harrison Ford, a retired Blade Runner, forced to reinstate his job to kill 4 replicants who escaped an off-world colony and are hiding on Earth.
So what did you guys think of the film?
Yeah, much like the same one. I appreciated it for what it was. The technical aspects of it, they were pioneering. I didn't so much enjoy the film. I'm used to a good old rom-com or something like that. So I'll give it like a 3 out of 5.
Yeah, I think I'm on the same boat as you, Ben. I would give it a 3 out of 5 as well, just because it's not my usual type of film to enjoy. Understand a bit of it?
Yeah, I mean, I quite enjoyed it. I'm not usually the one for science fiction, but I think it was quite interesting, the cyberpunk genre of it all, with the high-tech, low-life sort of focus. This was visually reflected through the environment, with the streets of the futuristic Los Angeles. So it was we saw the streets were quite dark and dingy, and the atmosphere was really dreary and raining all the time. In combination with that, the constant surrounding neon lights and electronic billboards showed a real prominent technology use throughout the city, which depicts the genre quite notably. Also, the decaying landscape. There were no signs of animals or any type of nature, and that portrayed quite a depressed landscape. It was a bit of a wasteland and signified a real grim dystopia. So what do we all think about themes?
Themes, yeah, I think there was lots of different themes, but one that really stuck out to me was the whole theme and idea of identity. Like what makes us human, like what was so different about the humans in the film and the replicants, especially I suppose with the memories. They played with a lot of memories and how different memories, like is it our memories that actually make us people? Is it the experiences we've had, or is that the only thing making us human?
Right, I'd totally agree with you on the theme there. Probably the prominent feature of the film that made it stand out for me was the eyes. So for instance, the eye at the start, right through to where they did the VK testing, like you were talking about, and they test between replicants and humans to find out who's who, based on emotional triggers and the eye dilating and different things. But then right through to the fact that in the film, the replicants' eyes, they actually glow brighter than the normal human eyes. But probably one of the key things in the film is the opening scene. You kind of see it as a key theme. There's just a big eye hovering over the city amongst the pyramid tower that is Tyrell's tower. Almost this kind of introduces this idea that the guy inside the tower is over the city, like almost like a godlike figure over the city.
Yeah, you're absolutely right there. I think it depicts visually the idea of class social structure. So, as you said, like Tyrell can be seen as quite a godlike figure, sitting high in his pyramid, looking down over the streets. So within the Tyrell's workspace, it's very minimal and spacious, and it's quite a calm and quiet atmosphere, which I think really contrasts quite heavily with the overcrowded streets of the lower class.
Yeah. Would you recommend the film?
I would definitely. It's the sort of film that I enjoyed the second time. I saw more meaning to it, picked up more visual clues as to what was really happening.
Yeah, I think it's the type of film you can watch over and over and over and over and still see new things.
Yeah.
But that leads us on to our next film. Elsie, would you like to introduce what the next film was?
Yep, so the next film we'll be looking at is the best you will see us reviewing tonight. We'll be looking at Dr. Horrible's Singalong blog.
For every day, there is a night. For every world, there is an underworld. And for every hero, there's this guy.
What? So that's, coming along.
Well, this is a 40-minute web series by Joss Whedon. You guys may have heard of his other works such as The Avengers and Buffy the Vampire Slayer. But yeah, this particular web series follows our main character Neil Patrick Harris, who is Dr. Horrible, and kind of his journey on trying to balance his career goals of joining the Evil League of Evil and pursuing Do-Gooder Penny, who works with the homeless and other such angelic things. But what did you guys think of the web series?
I thought it was fantastic. This whole idea of video logging. So for instance, the way it starts is like him here, just standing there talking to the screen. So effectively he's talking to who's on the other side of his audience, which is anyone who views it. And I just found it super engaging, which meant that anything he goes through within the video log series, it's like a roller coaster of emotions. So you laugh with him, you cry with him, you feel all the different emotions because he's engaging from the start. So that element of video logging, I really quite enjoyed it because I hadn't seen it before.
Yeah, you're right. It made it kind of feel like he was a friend just talking to another one of his friends about, like a diary entry about, what was happening through his day to day. I think the musical element of it really added to the comedic genre. I think it allowed space for the characters to kind of talk about their innermost feelings and thoughts about a situation that couldn't be shared in their reality. For example, how Dr. Horrible can't speak to Penny when he sees her on the streets or in the laundromat, but he sings to her and expresses how much admiration he has for her through song. And essentially these moments are sort of a pause in their reality and just sort of allows the character to express their feelings to the audience rather than just to the other characters.
Yeah. I think the most standout part for me was the character development, how Dr. Horrible starts off as this character who denies a fight with Johnny Snow's because he doesn't want to interrupt the kids at the park. Like, he was such a good character even though he was the bad guy.
Right.
But and then you can pinpoint in the film exactly where he kind of goes evil, and then where he was once kind of a good guy just trying to get rid of the bad in the world, he turns into the bad guy, just straight up going for his goals. And yeah, that's what really interested it for me. Interested it? Yep, new word. But I would definitely recommend this. 100% would recommend. I would even go out and buy it.
So the next film that we're going to talk about is Alphaville by Jean-Luc Godard. Let's look at the trailer.
In the 1965 French New Wave film Alphaville, Eddie Costain plays Lemmy Caution. An intergalactic secret agent is set out on a mission to Alphaville, a futuristic dystopian metropolis whose residents are controlled by a central computer system called Alpha 60. Reducing humans to a cold, controlled state of mind, free thinking and emotion results in immediate assassination. Caution's mission is to investigate the disappearance of his predecessor, Henry Dixon, and to capture and kill Professor Von Braun, the creator of the controlling supercomputer.
So what do you guys think of Alphaville?
For me, I'm going to have to be negative Nancy. If I could give it a negative score, I would. I just hated the film. Like, I tried to look at it from a different perspective, but just could not. I strongly despised your film.
I probably didn't despise it as much. I thought the film was very black and white. Terrible joke. Terrible joke. I thought it was bizarre. Like the scenes, for instance, when they're swimming in the pool, getting shot with the guns. It was just random. The language barrier wasn't a difficulty. It was just. I just thought the film was bizarre. Didn't follow very well, so it didn't really engage me. So I'd rate it like one out of 5, which is a bit tough for a classic. That's mine.
I thought it was an interesting sort of investigation as to where technology was taking us,
right.
And sort of a bit of a stab at those people who at that time were all about the development of technology. And I guess it was kind of Jean-Luc Godard's interpretation of what could happen in the future.
Right, yeah, true.
I think the director attributes film noir trends with the classic profiling of the main character, Lemmy Caution. He's wearing the classic fedora and trench coat with the upturned collar, which was really quite reflective of that film noir trend.
Actually, when I watched it, I was reminiscent of Humphrey Bogart and Casablanca.
Yeah.
Those types of characters, the Maltese Falcon, all the different film noir investigators, which is funny because those films were filmed significantly earlier, so they carried it on when they filmed this in the 60s, especially for a futuristic sci-fi film, and that character in there was a little dislocated, but surprisingly they still used the femme fatale character as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the stereotypical gender roles reflected the era quite well, like it was the 1960s and that was quite prominent. The male protagonist employs help from Natasha, who's quite a submissive female character. She is brainwashed all the time, but by interacting with Caution, she slowly reawakens her emotion, and this puts her in quite a vulnerable position where by beginning to act more with emotion, she is facing the firing squad. Right. And this puts her in a damsel sort of position where Caution really needs to protect and save her.
Right.
And the other women in the film are reduced basically to sexual objects, where they're either seductresses or prostitutes. Some have secondary responsibilities, like assisting roles, like a secretary or a hotel clerk, but this is again just assisting men, which is really reflective of their state of being controlled by men.
Yeah, and going on from the controlling, I found it really interesting how those in control found that to create the perfect society that they were trying to create and to make good human beings, I suppose, that they had to get rid of the emotions and kind of just strip us down to robots to make us what they wanted.
Right. Reflected in the narrative voice of the robot that's just the whole way through. And when you hear it, you're just like, oh, not again, stop. But absolutely, it kind of just sucked the emotion out of the film. Yeah.
And I think that was quite an interesting contrast to Blade Runner, where we see they are exploring human emotion or emotion as what makes you be a human, and testing the replicants and those who didn't show emotion were assassinated because they were robots. But in this film, it's more that if you are free thinking or showing emotion, then you are killed.
Right.
So that's an interesting parallel between the two films. So in summary, yeah, I did enjoy the film. I thought it had some a great exploration of technology use and brought up some interesting points about emotion.
Yeah, you went nicer than both Elsie and I in terms of your rating of the film. That is all from us. We do hope you enjoyed our reviews of the 4 films. We definitely had fun while doing it, but we won't see you next time because this episode will never happen again. Catch you later.